Good morning, happy Friday. Shall we get into this again? I found another blog post, so I thought it would be nice to read it from my backyard this morning. This one is called Happy Brain Day 1 year later. So let's get going, shall we? Thanks again for being here. Greetings and happy brain day. I woke up this morning very excited to tell my husband that I love him and rejoice in his position next to me. It was 1 year ago today that he underwent brain surgery, and forever this day, March 1st, will be a special day for us. This is the day of celebration that he was returned to us unscathed. So his first brain surgery was March 1st of 2013. So this was 1 year later. And I'm hung up on the word unscathed, but we'll keep going. I wrote this post shortly after Brain Day last year, so I would never forget any of it. I haven't read it since then because honestly it was too hard on my heart to remember it. But today felt like an appropriate time to reread it and share it all. The post ends abruptly, but the true ending is where we are today, living, loving, enjoying, and always giving thanks for the blessing of his full recovery. We arrived at the hospital long before the break of dawn. It was dark and cold, and Chris walked so fast from the car to the building's entrance. The speed of my husband's movement is significant because I could hardly keep up with him. He walked with his hands in his pockets and his head facing down, each long stride he made with purpose and conviction, both of which came from a month of waiting and the magnitude of what possibly lay before us that day. It was almost too much to bear. It makes me imagine a color chart displaying different levels of bearing. The bottom lines of this imagery chart are various shades of blue, possibly adorned with whimsical flowers and happy faces. These blue lines represent life, just peachy, 100% bearable. As the lines begin to change to a more yellow tone, kind of like goldenrod, that I remember from my crayon box as a child, it's an indication that things are about to get a little shaky and to proceed with caution. Then, as goldenrod progresses up the chart into the uppermost section, it becomes clear by the stop sign red that there is no turning back. That was us. The brightly glowing red that we faced within those top lines meant that any amount of bearability left was slipping away quickly through our fingers, and we needed to move that fast or else our hearts might beat out of our chests and an emotional meltdown would surely follow. But there was no time for that. If I could go so far as to imagine an accompanying voice to the scene, it might have spoken the words, "You're at capacity, Deseos. Move faster, get there and get it done." I don't know what I hoped for that morning. It was a long time coming and we had arrived. Had I imagined I would walk into the hospital holding his hand? Maybe I overlooked that detail in all of my planning. But I know it made sense for me to be however close to him as was possible before it absolutely couldn't be anymore. We stayed in a hotel directly across the street from the hospital that night before, yet somehow still managed to arrive 30 minutes ahead of schedule. The halls were vacant at 6 o'clock in the morning, not a sound to be heard really besides the patter of our shoes and the pounding of our hearts, but only we could hear that. The first item of business upon arriving was to have the IV put in place. Despite the early hour of the clock, I wished the woman checking us in was just a little nicer. Had she stayed up too late the night before, spilled her coffee, I thought, come on, lady, we need your smiles this morning. Do you know what we're about to go through today? Sometimes the small voice in my head becomes less small when the fate of my loved one is at hand. I might have been the only one who noticed her lack of sparkles at 6 in the morning. I let it go. In the waiting room, Chris put his music in his ears and I just let him be. I understand the comfort of our music, and he needed it more than ever to whisk him away to a safe place where his soul felt soothed and comforted. He leaned forward in his chair, elbows propped on his knees, his eyes closed, led by the gentle tapping of his foot to the beat. His body moved kind of rhythmically in his seat. I just watched him, sometimes placing my hand on his knee or his back. How many times could I say something more consoling like, "You'll be great, babe," or "Today's the day," as if he needed the reminder. Was it possible for me to speak the words, "I love you," one too many times? Maybe silence was our best friend that morning. That was the one thing I hadn't prepared for. I forgot to rehearse the words we would speak to one another before surgery. I feel like that's so huge, especially coming from me and what I understand about myself now, and how I always need and strive to make everything okay, like status quo, and that it's all in my control to make it such. So I think I'm going to read those words again. I forgot to rehearse the words that we would speak to one another before surgery. And this was his first surgery. So it's interesting to think about that sentiment, knowing that we had at least 4 more ahead of us. After the IV was installed, it was time to move to where the MRI would take place. I tried maintaining my position by Chris's side as the nurse wheeled him ever so quickly down the corridor. Her steps were fast, and I felt like a small child skipping along, trying to keep up with a grown-up loved one as they slowly backed the car out of the driveway and became further away from me. It felt like being too late and craving just one more hug or opportunity to squeeze in another "I love you" or "have a safe trip" or "see you when you get home." I wanted to be who Chris needed me to be during it all. Not knowing who that was for sure, I managed to muster just plain old me, except minus the freaking out part, which is quite honestly a normal state of my existence. But this day was different, and I can say with much certainty that it was God who helped me reel in the freaked out part and replace it with a profound sense of calm. Some moments were calmer than others, let's be real here. But if I ever knew what an answer to prayer felt like, it was then, on March 1st, 2013. But it was still too soon for me to know it. It was after the MRI was finished that things seemed to start speeding up, as if they weren't already, but before I knew it, we were separated from Chris while he was brought into the pre-op, but only for a short time. You had better believe I asked pretty much anyone with a hospital badge if it was time. Do I say, "See you later now?" Or will I get to see him again before he goes in? Just tell me. Make sure I know. Don't take him away without me knowing it. It's making me think of the end of his life. Don't take him away without me knowing it. The pre-op location was the final stop before the operating room. If our pulses weren't in a race already, they were now. But with no finish line in sight, everything unknown that I had feared for so long began swirling around me. The what ifs, the hows, the whens. We were in it now, and this was what it felt like. We followed the nurse through the pre-op area as she led us back to Chris. Imagine a long row of small rooms divided by nothing more than a curtain. We walked past one empty curtain room, past another, and yet another with still no sign of my husband. It was when I heard the low hum and clatter of operating room technicians and pre-op personnel ahead of us that I knew that we were almost to him. They were like a swarm of bees, and he was their flower, as it were. And I like that because he really was a flower. In real life, in surgery, he attracted everyone. He was that wonderful. When I saw him sitting up in the bed, all plugged in and hooked up, I felt relief. That is the word that comes to mind when I describe that moment. I'll say it again, relief. I was just glad to see his face. But there is a dramatic side of me who wants to really embellish it and declare how badly my heart ached and the way my world began collapsing all around me and how I was stricken with fear. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Be dramatic and embellish. Sister, this was as real as it gets. That is natural drama and zero embellishment. If I could go back to myself before and say these feelings are real and you should embrace them and have them, I would do that. Always making excuses for the feelings that I had or justifying the feelings that I had. But I have to be kind to her again. She got us here. Oh, certainly my heart ached and feared. Oh, certainly my heart ached and fear was a worthy opponent. But it wasn't crippling. I had already exhausted all of those earth-shattering feelings and scenarios leading up to Brain Day, and I had nothing more of that capacity to give. The difference on this day was that I shared my husband's insatiable desire to get it all over with. All of this stuff we had to take care of beforehand was just that. It was stuff. We held hands as we jumped through all the hoops of it together, except we wouldn't be able to hold hands the entire time this time. That is when it would become tricky, letting that go. Each resident took turns introducing themselves, explaining what their role was and how that they would assist in Chris's surgery. A very pregnant woman in charge of anesthesia spoke to us a mile a minute, but still earned my personal approval. I think it was her confidence that won me over. Another woman, with whom I cannot remember her name or her position, was a constant by us, and we knew that we could ask her anything. I appreciated her. When Chris couldn't get his wedding ring off, she was first to jump to the task of finding something gooey to smear across it. It was a team effort for sure to pry off his finger, perhaps the first time his skin underneath had seen the light of day since we were married 12 years ago. For safekeeping, I slid it onto my ring finger, and to my surprise, it fit. I wondered how and when I had received man hands. Stress, perhaps? I was glad it fit. It felt like receiving a Letterman's jacket or a class ring from your special guy back in high school. Something about it meant forever or inseparable, and that felt good to me. As the top of the 9 o'clock hour came and went, we listened to more instructions about the day and asked a few more questions, all as we waited for Dr. Breeze to arrive. He was the keeper of the checkered flag, and no amount of waving it would be had until he showed up and gave the approval. That much was very clear, and we knew it. The operating room techs knew it. He was like the great and powerful Oz, except not. And that's a good thing. When the doctor arrived, he shook my husband's hand and gave all of us the push of confidence that we needed to get moving again. It became time after that, my friends. The time I had feared in that crippling way for weeks. I never knew, nor could I have planned, how it would go when I had to leave Chris's side. His mom and dad stood by him, holding his hands and whispering loving words of encouragement and support, tears creeping forth from their eyes. I put my own heart, the heart of a wife, aside, and I felt her sadness, wondering how a mother's heart must fall apart upon telling her only son goodbye, and that she'd see him after brain surgery. Or how the heart of a brave father softened at the realization that he couldn't save his boy this time, and would relinquish all of his trust to God into the hands of a respected neurosurgeon. When it was my turn, I smiled big at my husband. One thing I've realized about myself lately is that when I'm under duress and find that an emotional situation is imminent, I smile. It could be construed as a forced smile, but actually it isn't. Maybe this smile that happens just demonstrates my emotional defenses at their finest. So I smiled that really big smile, and I told him I loved him and that I would just be out in the waiting room. As if that would offer comfort. It's not like he could just run out and get me if he needed me. Then we gave each other a high five. Well, actually not a high five, just a five. Except the way we do it is in slow motion. Sliding my palm face down over his palm face up. And then we kissed. And I looked at him deeply and I told him that I would see him on the flip. That's what we always said. See you on the flip. It would have felt contrived if we did it any other way. We needed to treat the moment as any other because that is what felt safe and familiar to us. Safe and familiar. Except it felt nothing like it. This is hard, you guys. Knowing what I know now. But I see the strength that we had, and we didn't know it. But I see it. I see that strength. And remembering every little bit of familiarity and safety that meant something to us, and holding on to that. That surgery, I think, was 9 hours. 10. Just we never imagined this outcome, so thank you for listening. Thank you for holding space and sharing space. And we'll catch you on the flip. Bye, bye, bye.